Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Aaron, and you have now joined the Nutanix and Storware joint webinar. Today we'll be discussing how Storware's data protection solution for VMs run on Nutanix. For your presenters today, we have Marcin Kubacki, Chief Software Architect at Storware, Peter Eicher, Director of Marketing at Catalogic, and Krish, Director of Product Marketing at Nutanix. On your right side, you will see an attachment link where you can get our joint solutions brief, as well as a PDF of the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask on the right side, and we will get back to you for a Q&A at the end. So right now, I'm going to be passing it off to Krish. Krish, it's all you.
Thank you, Aaron. So what I'd like to do before we really talk about the joint solution that Storware and Nutanix has to offer you is kind of set the context on why Nutanix exists and what problem it's solving for our customers and the IT community as a whole. Right? So here's a survey that was run by Gartner, a leading research analyst firm, last year. And what they found is CEOs are really looking to drive growth grow their businesses, and they're looking for innovation to come from product improvement as well as IT-related innovation that can help improve product experiences as well as internal productivity. So it's really a great opportunity for IT leaders, so CIOs and their peers, so the VP of IT's, infrastructure and operations teams and such, to really interlock with the line of business to see how they can expose those opportunities for value addition and innovation. Now, while this is a really, really positive trend and really sets the standard for being a great time to be in IT, our infrastructure, the technology we rely on, is not built for that kind of agility to run at the pace of business change, right? So classically, what happens is you've got these multiple layers within the data center that is built upon network gear and servers on top of that, then storage architectures and virtualization software on top of that. So it's a really painful process of negotiating with multiple vendors to assemble it, integrate it, so it all works together harmoniously, and then to manage that infrastructure so that the applications and services that run upon them and are incredibly critical to the business work the way they should, and troubleshoot when issues happen. And quite often, all of these silos of infrastructure are managed by different teams, and that leads to a lot of pain when it comes to troubleshooting problems that impact business operations. And there's a lot of finger pointing, multiple dashboards that need to be correlated and understood, and quite often it takes a lot longer and it's a lot more of a lift to actually resolve problems when they happen. Now, this problem gets worse as you think about upgrades because there's a lot of dependencies between the various elements of the infrastructure stack and compatibility issues that really leave the IT community and infrastructure and operations folk wanting in terms of what they can achieve with their infrastructure choices. And then it starts all over again when it comes to refresh cycles, right? So what happens is our community, the IT community, infrastructure and operations teams, are forced to spend most of their time caring and feeding for infrastructure and less time really focusing on applications that businesses rely upon. When you think about why the line of business relies upon IT, it is not to tend to the infrastructure. That is hidden. It's under the surface. They don't even acknowledge it exists. What they truly see and what's truly visible to your business users and to your customers are the applications and services they interact with. So what really should be happening is the shift from spending 20% on infrastructure to 80% on applications, right? So that's how we want to change this division of time and effort upon. So you know what? Those messages have not gone unheard, right? That pain has not gone unheard. The public cloud vendors are listening. Right, so they are really innovating in this space to make it very quick and easy to deploy applications that is immediately accessible by end users, by ensuring that IT teams don't have to overspend on infrastructure that's required 3 to 5 years from now and are paying for exactly what they need at this moment of time. By enabling this one-click simplicity so that the IT teams are focused more upon delivering applications and services and less upon really managing and tending to the speeds and feeds. And finally, making the notion of continuous innovation invisible, right? Because those updates keep flowing. Your infrastructure keeps getting better and better and better without you actually having to lift a finger. And that's the beauty of the public cloud. So my question to all of us is, why can't we bring all these public cloud benefits into the data center, right? So how is this done? And that's exactly where Nutanix pitched its tent and spent its time trying to bring that value back into the data centers. So if you think about traditional infrastructure architectures, right, you've got the bare metal servers with the applications running on top of them with some sort of network attached storage, right? So along came virtualization, which was an incredible innovation at its time, which allowed IT teams to abstract the underlying compute away from the applications and allow more density of applications to run upon those bare metal servers, right? So virtualization was great when it came to version 1 of building cloud-like scalability within the data center. The next act really is about how do you virtualize those elements that continue to be the bottleneck, which is the network area storage, by virtualizing storage as well, right? So this is where hyperconverged infrastructure comes to play, where you create a distributed storage fabric across all the nodes within your clusters, so you can truly build bite-sized infrastructure that can scale out linearly, just like the public cloud does, right? So this is why you're truly beginning to see public cloud-like behavior, hyperscale behavior within your data centers. And the benefits of that is it comes with all those business-critical elements that you need, right, from enterprise-grade storage to software-defined networking and orchestration capabilities to protect your networks and to ensure that the policies are set in place to protect applications from one another. Along with native virtualization, which Nutanix is proud to offer through AHV, which will be discussed in greater detail later in this webinar. Because when you go to the public cloud, you don't ask which hypervisor you're using. And that's the same experience we want to impart upon our customers within their own data centers. And finally, also rolling in native data protection and DR capabilities. But for the focus of this webinar, we will be talking more about how we enable our customers to get a greater variety of choice by integrating with our partners like Storware to leverage their capabilities from a DR and DP perspective. So in effect, what you get is this. You've got that complex stack on the left and software-defined hyperconverged infrastructure equivalent on the right, right? So by abstracting away all those tiers within the infrastructure and consolidating how it is operated by infrastructure and operations professionals, you begin to get full-stack engineer-like behavior, right, by the audiences within the infrastructure and operations teams, where they get end-to-end control right from the infrastructure up to the virtualization management and reap the benefits of operational analytics that can help them make better decisions around running business-critical workloads, plus planning for growth and capacity based upon business needs. And then eventually thinking about what it means to take on that DevOps-like mindset to be able to automate and orchestrate how apps are deployed, managed, upgraded, scaled out. So you're beginning to put away all those repetitive, mundane tasks to automation and AI and ML, while you focus on what truly adds value to the business by driving innovation, supporting more applications and services upon your infrastructure. And finally, to abstract away which cloud your applications run and to offer true mobility across your clouds, whether it is in your data center or up in the public cloud. So Nutanix has been recognized for this technology, but then when we talk about what it truly means to protect, to trust your infrastructure and run your business critical applications upon it, it's truly important to make sure that the data is protected and your planning for that day when you need that resiliency baked into the platform. With that, I'd like to hand it over to my next presenter to talk about the combined solution.
Thank you, Krish. It's Marcin here. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about vProtect. So there is, every infrastructure needs actually a good protection. So if you are running multiple virtual machines and actually multiple operating systems, you want to make this protection as easy and as smooth going as possible. So agentless protection has been, for a couple of years around. And now with vProtect, we are introducing support for Nutanix. In general, vProtect supports multiple platforms, but the best support that we can offer right now is for the Nutanix, especially that we include several features that I'm going to talk later about. General architecture looks like this. So you have vProtect somewhere in the middle, somewhere in your infrastructure, and there is a set of Nutanix clusters with virtual machines running somewhere there. And vProtect basically does snapshots and exports data to one of the or multiple backup providers that you are going to attach at some point. Well, we can start with local storage, but we also support some other, we have also other options such as object storage or enterprise-grade solutions, depending on what you are actually going to need or what you already have in your data center. vProtect technically consists of two components. One is the vProtect server. This is the web interface. This is the central console. It holds all of the metadata, and it manages multiple nodes. Nodes are basically data movers. So they technically connect to all of the either backup providers or Nutanix clusters, and they download all of the data and push, obviously, to the backup providers. You can add more nodes to your infrastructure to provide greater scalability, or sometimes if you have geographically dispersed environments, you're able to back up VM in one cluster and restore it in the other one. From, let's say, a little bit more details about the implementation itself. Depending on the platform, the backup process is completely different. But for Nutanix, especially, you want to install vProtect node as the virtual machine on top of your cluster. So if you have multiple clusters, you just deploy a small virtual machine that are going to act as a proxy. So vProtect server is going to handle all of the jobs and actually assign tasks to all of these nodes. You will see that later in the demo. And each of these nodes are obviously seamlessly communicating directly with the Nutanix and backup providers. So data flow is completely separated from the vProtect server itself. vProtect server just handles the management part and handles all of the jobs and metadata. Key features for the Nutanix platform that we support right now. So first of all, it is VM level protection. So we are snapshotting the virtual machine itself. But we support also incremental backups with change region tracking feature that Nutanix AHV has introduced. And that is why you are able not only to have all the time full backups, but also have this delta ability to back up VMs incrementally every day. We use native API, so we don't copy data behind the scenes or something like this. Everything follows the official Nutanix guidelines as far as the backup process is concerned. So that is why we have actually gained certification, for AHV quite recently. Just because you're doing snapshots doesn't mean that you cannot restore single files. We are able to mount these backups later on the nodes. So if you have, it works both for full and incremental backups. You are able later to mount such backup, and vProtect will seamlessly merge the increments for you. Obviously, you are able to exclude some of the drives that you don't want to protect, and use application consistent snapshots. That's the feature that Nutanix offers, so we are able to enable that on VM level. And if that is still not enough, we also introduced pre-post snapshots, well, sort of custom command execution. That is invoked over SSH particularly on each of the VMs that you need. So we can acquire database before the snapshot takes place, and later VM database is being resumed just after snapshot complete. No vendor locking. So now you have Nutanix installed, you have vProtect, and suddenly you realize that you want to change to the other backup provider behind the scenes. You can just add another backup destination, and that's it. So suddenly your backups will land not only in the file system, or they can land in IBM Spectrum Protect or whatever that you have currently in your data center. So technically that extends capabilities of these backup providers with Nutanix support. So if you have platforms that they don't natively support Nutanix, now we are able to extend them also with, like, well, that's the EMC or IBM or whatever you have in your data center. If you have more VMs, that probably you would like to automatically assign them and schedule them based on specific tags or the names. For Nutanix, it comes as a set of rules, either include or exclude, and all of these are going to be automatically assigned during the index process. Let's focus for a moment on where the data can be stored, okay? The most generic way of attaching the storage is just file system. So you are able to mount any file system, even if that comes with encryption, deduplication, or whatever you like. Especially useful can be replicated file systems, like GlassDorFS, for instance. On the other hand, some of our customers already are using S3, or they are going to Azure Cloud. And finally, we support free enterprise-grade backup providers such as IBM Spectrum Protect, Dell EMC Networker, and Veritas NetBackup. So technically, suddenly with the vProtect, you are able to join together your Nutanix and your existing backup providers already that you have already in the data center. That's an example with the IBM Spectrum Protect. So a little bit more details about how the typical implementation looks like. So you have in this picture vProtect server and node installed together. vProtect node holds some staging space. This space is required for some additional scans that we perform on the images that we download. And later, once the data is being downloaded from the attached drives from the snapshots, we dump the data, we use change region tracking to just get the incremental backups if you would like, and we push to some backup provider. In this case, it's IBM Spectrum Protect. The good thing is that you can actually install together IBM Spectrum Protect with vProtect, and that gives you, for instance, a single box to store all of the data with central, so you don't have to install it in several places. That's an example with DDBoost file system plugin. That enables you, that's a good example of how to use file system together with the duplication. So technically, you are able to join even staging space with your backup provider. That gives that gives instant store operation for the vProtect. To be more accurate, when you are actually performing a backup, first, obviously, we have to export data, so that is the export task, and later we need to push the data. However, if the data is already in the destination file system, vProtect is able just to move files instead of copying them again. And especially that if it's deduplicated, you save your storage. With a newer version, we intend also to have built-in deduplication with the VDO. So you obviously can use it already, but we are going also to simplify that in the next release. vProtect can keep last backups locally. So if you have remote cloud, we have several customers that are actually using S3. And that means that you probably need to restore later several gigs of your virtual machine over the internet connection. So that can be quite slow. So with vProtect, we are able to enable with just one click option to keep last backups locally, so that the last copy, the copy actually that you want quite often the most, and we want to restore always the last copy of the virtual machine, is already there, so you don't have to download it again. Few words about the backup consistency. By default, vProtect does crash consistent backups, but obviously if you would like to have higher consistency level, you can first enable application consistent snapshots with just a single button on the virtual machine level, and later if you want higher level of consistency, you can introduce your own scripts that are going to be executed on the virtual machine whenever backup is being performed. So 3 options for you. And in general, vProtect was built in mind for simplicity. So we wanted to make it like 1 to 3 steps. So first you need just to connect your infrastructure, and usually you do it only once. Backup or create groups and schedule backups. And finally restore VM if needed or mount it. So like that should be probably a good example should be shown during the demo. Okay, so now is the demo part. So let me just give you a short overview of what is going to happen. So first we are going to log into the vProtect console. We are going to add hypervisor manager, scan for the infrastructure, so for virtual machines, hypervisors, storage, etc. Later we are going to perform backups, create groups, schedules. You will see that both Linux and Windows machines with the both full and incremental backups are performed. Finally, we are going to mount such backups either automatically or with separate partitions that we want to have to be mounted on our node, and restore virtual machine to the Nutanix. So let's do it. Okay, so first step is to log into the vProtect. So what you are seeing right now is the dashboard, some statistics about the protection and so on. Now, the first step that we're going to perform is to add the hypervisor manager. Hypervisor manager in let's say, Nutanix world is Prism. So Prism handles all of the management stuff. So we are just copying and pasting the URL to our Prism, and we provide the necessary credentials to access it. So these credentials are later going to be used to access Nutanix API and perform all of the actions. Key thing is to obviously to select appropriate type, but also to select a node, because you can have multiple nodes accessing multiple Nutanix environments. In our case, we have only one node, and we have just initiated the index operation on this node. So vProtect server has assigned a task. Everything in vProtect is a sort of a task. And it has been assigned to our only node. It's called local node, and it has been started right now. So what the node does, it connects to the Nutanix. It collects all of the information about the hypervisors, hypervisor storage, clusters, and virtual machines, and their drives. And this is also being done periodically by the vProtect. So you don't have to initiate that every time manually or something. So you can see that there are several storage containers. There is a single cluster in here, and we have the list of our virtual machines. So in our case, we have 3 virtual machines. One is obviously the vProtect. Two of them are the Windows and Linux examples. And let's check that also on the Nutanix administration console. So we are logging into the Nutanix, and we are going to the virtual machines section. Obviously, if you have multiple clusters, multiple environments, all of these virtual machines are going to be presented in the vProtect UI. This screen is actually to make you actually a little bit more familiar with the Nutanix list. And as you can see, these are the VMs that we are going to use during our demonstration. So now let's go back to the virtual machine section and let's create a group. Groups in vProtect's world are sort of the way that you are assigning several VMs with specific priority schedules, and you want to put together in a single backup destination. So backup destination is your, let's say, instance of backup provider with specific retention settings. So we are able to automatically assign VMs. That's the rule that I have mentioned earlier. So if you want to automatically assign virtual machines to this group, you can enable that feature, or you can assign manually virtual machines that we have. We want to assign 2 of them to our demo group. Priority, well, everything is, tasks are prioritized in vProtect. So we are able to define more important VMs and sort of less important VMs. And there are also some additional features as far as the forced failure settings, if you have multiple tasks constantly failing on the same operation. Now we are going to create 2 schedules. We are going to create full and incremental schedules. Typically, you want to perform, let's say, once per week a full backup and later during the week incrementals. So you can select particular days of week or months if you really have such VMs that you just want to back up once per year or something. And you assign all of these schedules to the particular group. In our case, we have only one. Nevertheless, we assign both of them to our group and decide that full backup can be done, for instance, once per week. So this is sort of the configuration steps that you want to perform, where you make decisions. What do you want to protect and when? Now let's go back to the virtual machines and perform some backups. As you can see, we have right now the red dots. That means that virtual machines are no longer protected because when you assign a schedule, obviously you know when the backup should be performed, and no backup has been done yet. So that is also sort of the other word for the group. You can imagine that it is a policy. Here are the virtual machine details. You are able to enable quiet snapshots, so application consistent snapshots, or invoke these remote SSH commands. And you also see the backup history, backup size of the VM that have been performed in the past. So we have initiated an export task, I mean the backup in this case. As you can see, the first task is going to be called export. 2 tasks can be, actually multiple tasks can be executed at the same time, and you are always able to decide how many of these threads are being executed at each stage. So if you have higher performing backup provider, you maybe want to increase the stored threads limit. In our case, both of the tasks have been assigned to the single node, but that's not the rule. You can have multiple backups happening on multiple nodes. Export process technically uses the disk attachment. So it uses Proxy, and it requires snapshot to be performed, and later the drives are being attached, and the data is at this point completely accessible by the vProtect, so he's able to dump data for the backup purposes. After the last step of the export is also the file system scanning. That enables you later to choose which file systems are going to be mounted in your mounted backups. In our case, to have some more realistic experience when we are performing multiple backups in this demo, let me just show you what's inside the VMs. There is a script both in this Linux and in these Windows machines. And in this directory, well, this one is called test. Files that basically are being generated periodically and write timestamps just to have some sort of simulation that something is happening all the time on this VM. So as you can see, the test directory obviously has some files generated, so it's live in this case, and between the backup that is full and the backup that is and the increment, you will see that additional chunks have also been merged and restored. Okay, one thing to notice, virtual machine snapshots are not visible in the Nutanix console. That actually is is by design by the Nutanix, so don't worry about this. Virtual machine snapshots are being done by the API, so it is not, these two together are actually completely different. As you have noticed, you have multiple backup destinations available. So each of these backup destinations have separate retention, have separate settings, like paths in this case, or specific settings related to the APIs or of particular vendor. You also have some more advanced features such as pre-post access customization points, so you're able to introduce your own scripts to mount or do some actions before the storage and after the storage is being accessed. That's especially handy when you are using file system and you want to mount remote volumes on demand. Now, when the export completes, the store task starts. So this is the moment where the data is being transferred to the external backup provider. However, if the file system that you are using for the staging and backup provider is also a file system, and it is the same file system, vProtect will detect such scenario and it's going to move files instead of copying. So that answers most of the questions, what about double writes or something. vProtect obviously assumes that you have geographically dispersed teams. So if you are working in multiple time zones, you are able to assign appropriate time zone for you, depending on where you are working from. And that obviously translates to the appropriate timestamps of the tasks, schedules, and whatever you are actually looking at in the UI. Okay, now as you can see, we have one of our backups that has successfully completed. So it has been successfully stored. We are invoking incremental backup. When you have your incremental backup set properly, like in this case, vProtect holds the last snapshot on your infrastructure. So you're going to see that actually in the snapshot stuff. This snapshot is being used later for incremental backups. So now, as you can see, export is much, much faster because it has already received change region tracking information from the Nutanix, and it was able to download and store immediately this 1 megabyte of changed blocks. The same situation, let's repeat on the second virtual machine. This time, we have a Windows machine. It was 50 gigs before. Let's try now with the incremental backup. Obviously, you can also schedule this to run, let's say, in 2 or 3 hours if you would like. You don't have to run it immediately. Snapshot tab, as you probably notice, has already 1 in the brackets. That means that the snapshot that is being used for incremental is there, and you are able also to exclude drives if needed. Two virtual machines are now protected. Here we have actually 2 drives, so that could be actually an option to exclude specific drive if we would like. Okay, few more incremental backups are being run by the node. The approach is completely transparent across multiple virtualization platforms, multiple backup providers, and especially as far as the overall process is concerned. As you can see, we are constantly moving around the same UI parts of the UI, so that makes the whole solution a bit easier to understand. Now let's mount some backups. So you have two options. You are able either to mount specific partitions from each of these backups, or you are able to automatically mount, that's, let's say, Linux feature within a single root file system. So single root, give a path to a single root, and all of the file systems are going to be mounted for that VM. Mounted backups are being mounted on the node side. So technically, you are able to backup in one node, in one part of the infrastructure, and mount it in the other place if you would like. Once the backup is mounted, we are able to access it and browse it as if it was a real virtual machine. To mount backups, well, that obviously depends on the backup provider, but in general, you have to restore backups first. That is why you see first restore task, and later there is a mount task. However, for file system backup providers, we are able to randomly read and write data. That actually means that when you are using backup provider or file system backup provider, you are able instantly restore, because vProtect obviously detects that this is already accessible, and he mounts just this backup. Like right now, we are able to see mounted backup with all of these files that we have actually seen previously, and they have been deleted in the VM. Obviously, restore operation needs to merge increments. So if you would like to either mount backup or restore to hypervisor manager, it is vProtect that handles all of these merging process. Another backup has been already mounted. So now we are able to see that second backup is already accessible on our node. Just to give you an idea, well, obviously this is currently being mounted on the node, so we need to access the mount like we are doing right now with PuTTY. But in the future, we would like also to have that in our UI. So you will just click and download all of the files without having to log into this particular system. Now the restore operation. So we are choosing appropriate hypervisor manager and storage that you would like to use to import your data. So in our case, we have only one choice, obvious choice with our Nutanix cluster in this case, and we have just initiated the restore operation. So the first task is to get all of the data back into our staging, and later the next task is going to be import task. This one is going to create a virtual machine. So first we need to recreate drives, push the data, well, obviously merge first during the restore operation, and when the import finishes, we import metadata of the virtual machine. So you should end up exactly with the same VM, or almost exactly, because there are some differences. If you would like to have MAC address restored, we are going also to do that, but only if there is no VM with that particular MAC addresses. So that's also sometimes a question that pops up. As you can see, the VM has been already restored. The drives have appeared. We have seen 2 drives in the Nutanix console. And the virtual machine is ready to be powered on. In our case, we are just going to rename it to make clear which one is being and that has been restored. Keep in mind, well, in the next release, we are going just to add this small feature to have ability to rename automatically. But in general, we have received requests to keep as most accurate naming and assign configuration as possible to the so. Our virtual machine is booting, so we have successfully restored our Linux. And here are the files that we have seen in the past when we performed multiple backups, especially these incrementals. Okay, that concludes the demo. Let's go back for a moment to our presentation then. Okay, now a few words about our partnership with Catalogic.
Okay, thank you, Marcin. This is Peter Eicher with Catalogic. I just want to take a moment to explain the relationship between the companies. Catalogic and Storware are both technology partners as well as distribution partners. So in North America, Catalogic is in fact the exclusive distributor for vProtect. So if you're in the North American region and you're interested in learning more about vProtect and getting a demo, a one-on-one demo and getting access to the software, etc., anything like that, you can contact us at Catalogic Software. In fact, if you go to catalogicsoftware.com/vProtect, you'll find a demo request form. You can just fill that out and you'll be happy to get in contact with you to help you out. We're also doing the support in North America for the product, so you do have local time zone based support. And in fact, Catalogic is quite well known for the our excellent support that we've had for many years. Very, very high customer approval ratings around that. And in fact, one of the nice things is that we don't even, we technically have a level 1 support, but we don't really have level 1, and that anybody you contact in our support organization is already a product expert who can help you immediately. So you don't have those scenarios where you call up, spend 20 minutes explaining your problem to somebody who hangs up and somebody else calls you back 4 hours later. Right? You don't have any of those kind of things to go through. The first person you're in contact with will immediately help you addressing any issues or giving you information that you need, etc. So that's really all I wanted to mention is that so you understand the nature of that relationship in the North American region. And with that, I'll hand it back to Marcin.
Thank you for that. And just a brief, well, I guess we can proceed with the Q&As. This is just a slide with our contact pages, and keep in mind that vProtect has already been certified, so we can safely use with your Nutanix environment. So I guess it's a moment to start Q&As if you have any questions.
And also, after the webinar is concluded, you'll receive an email with a replay of the webinar if you'd like to watch it again. So it looks like we don't have any questions from the audience. If you'd like us to email you, go ahead and put your email in the chat function, and we'll get in contact with you if you want to talk to us privately. But otherwise, the contact information is on the screen. We'd like to thank you all for coming out, joining us today, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening, day, wherever you are. Oh, we have a question real quick. So is there application awareness for Exchange and SQL?
Is there application awareness? Well, it is not really the application awareness. It is rather the ability for you to implement the snapshotting properly. So vProtect doesn't detect the applications inside the virtual machines, but you are able to do anything what you actually need to be performed remotely over SSH or with the Nutanix tooling with the application consistent snapshots. So technically, if you want to quiet your database, you are able to do that with the vProtect. However, if you would like to back up the database itself without the context of the virtual machine, that probably requires tooling.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcin. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you have a good evening, good afternoon, and you can contact us at Catalogic Nutanix, and Storware. And also feel free to check out the link of the presentation and the solutions brief on your right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.